Conversations across time. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Conversations across time. 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 Conversations across time.
Good evening and welcome to the final episode in a series that we are doing on, and the title of the series is What Does Vladimir Putin Want? And so this is number 4 in that series. And our panelists tonight are
Hi, good evening. I'm Fyodor Dostoevsky. I'm the greatest Russian author of all time. I am also Vladimir Putin's favorite author. My noted works were Crime and Punishment, The Idiot, Brothers Karamazov. Many of my characters have the same psychological attributes as President Putin. And if you understand my characters, you may understand some of the motives of President Putin.
Good evening. I am Sir Winston Spencer Churchill. From 1940 to 1945, I was the Prime Minister of Great Britain. I led Britain and its people through the Second World War and urged them to endure pain and sweat and tears and toil, to band together to defeat Hitler as he was rampaging through Europe. It was difficult, but we did it by pulling together. And that's it. Thank you.
ownership of land was important to Ukrainian farmers. Communism was objectionable to Ukrainian farmers. This is the year 1932 to 1934. It is known in the Ukraine as the Great Famine. Ukraine produces, the land is very fertile, and agriculture is one of its biggest industries. And Russia has an interest in agricultural production. When Stalin tried to enforce communism on the Ukrainian people, lots of the people that lived in the Ukraine were Russian. They were Russian speaking. But when Stalin saw that Ukraine was resistant, he had all of the agricultural produce that Ukraine had that whole production, he had that shipped to Russia. And that's why that shot that if you were watching the show last week, that's why that's your screen shot is so important. Because if you are Ukrainian, you can necessarily understand why Putin's aggression towards Ukraine is so objectionable. They have made a decision. They want to look west. They do not want to look east. They want to be aligned with a democratic process. So you can understand that when Putin tries to encroach upon their right as a sovereign nation, it is an issue that concerns the entire world. And so I want to ask either of you gentlemen to respond. Do you think NATO should be involved in the war that is currently being waged in Ukraine by Russia?
Yes, yes, Ms. Crawford. I believe that that some form of intervention by the other nations to protect Ukraine against an aggressor is necessary. I mean, to just simply allow an aggressor nation to invade a sovereign nation is just unconscionable. I am pleased that several of the Western nations, such as the United States, Germany, and others, have sent anti-tank and anti-tank missiles to Ukraine. But it's good to just fall short of sending troops.
Okay, so I take your point to be that NATO should be supportive of Ukraine, but not commit any boots on the ground.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
I mean, that is correct. That would, yes, that is correct, Miss Crawford.
Okay.
I believe that the Ukrainian people are doing a fabulous job of defending their homeland, and
But no, but I get it.
Yes.
The citizens are doing a great job, but the NATO should not be committing any troops to the effort.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Dostoevsky, how does that? What do you think about that question? Should NATO be involved?
NATO shouldn't be involved if they want to. I mean, they're giving military assistance and training, but if they get directly involved, you can just say World War III, and that's what it'll be. One of the things that people misunderstand, and I think President Putin does understand this, is that NATO wasn't originally created to stop to be a buffer for the Poland and those communist states that the Soviet Union, that Mother Russia had after World War II. It was to stop the spread of Bolshevism or communism, which I was opposed to as well. It was a derivative of the Truman Doctrine that we stop communism from spreading in Greece and Turkey and other places. The Allies agreed to give the Eastern European countries, Poland, Hungary, to the Soviet Union as part of our country. And all President Putin is saying is, I would like it back.
Well, wait a minute.
So the analogy I would give is, if Mexico, it revolted against the United States and said we were independent and our history was independent and we want Texas back because Texas was part of Mexico, how would the United States government respond?
So Mexico is a sovereign nation, and so is Ukraine.
Yes, and the United States took Mexico just like the Soviet Union took Ukraine. So
that's right.
They took a part. They took a geographic part of. They took a part of Mexico.
You said that Russia took the Ukraine.
We were given the Ukraine
which has existed since from time immemorial and denied it its independence.
Yes,
So
I was going to say
conceding that Ukraine is a sovereign, independent nation and is worthy of independence.
But I want to throw this out, please, and then that is that what Mr. Dostoevsky is saying is that Russia was given the Soviet Union was given the Ukraine. But when the Soviet Union ceased to exist, Ukraine was back to being a sovereign nation. And so to say that's what we were given, well, but the Soviet Union doesn't exist any longer. It's gone.
Yeah, but that's the thing that we're really trying to explore here is the mind of President Putin, and in his mind, that's what he
Yes,
wants to reestablish. So if we're
exactly.
going to understand what is going on, we got to understand his mental state and what he's trying to accomplish, and that's what he wants now. Whether he'll get it, whether the West will be able to
But you're
stop him is
right.
another story. But in order to understand and to correct it,
Mhm.
if that's what the West wants or to stop it, you have to understand his thinking. He was devastated by the breakup of the Soviet Union. It blew his mind. He was in, I believe, East Berlin when the wall came down. So that blew his
Yeah.
mind. And his whole philosophy is the corruption of the West. The West is morally bankrupt. The West is hypocritical. And who are they to tell me I can't go back to the year 1945 after the Yalta Conference? And unless the rest of the world
Mhm.
understand that's his mindset, you're not going to solve this problem.
And you know what's interesting? Because you've just demonstrated without even when you introduced yourself, you didn't even talk about the fact that you're known as the father of modern psychology. And that if that was just a very clear that was a very clear illustration to the audience as to why you are considered the father of modern psychology. Because until we get it, until the West comes to understand how he thinks, this is he's always going to present a problem. He's always going to pose a problem.
Right. You don't have to agree and justify everything. But from my point of view as a literary figure, if I were writing a novel now and Valley was the central character, I would explore his psychological makeup and why he is doing these things, just like I did with Ivan and the brothers Karamazov and then Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment. People, the motives are important. And if you don't understand that where he comes from psychologically in terms of his Eastern Orthodoxy, his belief in that church, in terms of what he thinks of Eastern Russia and Mother Russia going way back, in terms of what he thinks about the hypocrisy of the West, you're never going to be able to stop him. Now, maybe he'll be toppled internally. It's what's today's date that we're having this conference? February 28th. Well, it's only 16 days to the Ides of March, so maybe Valley should be looking up to what happened to Caesar and read some
Oh
Shakespeare.
my.
I,
Oh.
and you have, and also a very interesting fact is that the people of Russia themselves are against this war. You see vast demonstrations
Yes.
in St. Petersburg, Moscow, and the other cities. I mean, apparently, Mr. Putin's propaganda about the new Russian Empire isn't working on his people, Mr. Dostoevsky.
Yeah, that may be true, but you have to understand his psyche, and his psyche is that he has a Masonic complex, and he believed that the church and God has ordained him to do this. Now, when you're dealing with
Oh,
someone like
oh.
that, you better understand where they're coming from, or you're going to make a critical mistake and be in deep trouble.
Hitler was the same way, just to remind you.
Yeah,
And,
wait a minute.
I agree with you 100%, Sir Winston. And look at the devastation that it wrought.
Look.
And
I
the
mean,
devastation that Mr. Putin is bringing about in Ukraine, but God bless the brave and courageous Ukrainian people for fighting back.
so Mr. Dostoevsky, just considering your background in psychology, or being credited as being the founder of psychology, of modern psychology, um, where do you think the current conflict in Central Europe is headed? And I say Central Europe because of the impact of the refugees that are streaming into these border countries. it's not just a Ukrainian issue, it's a Central European issue. Where do you see that as headed?
I see two things happening. I see either the West gives in to some of Vladimir's demands, maybe a part of,
Like what kind of demands are we talking about?
well,
Is,
maybe the Russian speaking part of the Ukraine, the eastern sector, and the guarantee, an absolute guarantee that the Ukraine will not become part of NATO. In lieu of that, I'm not sure the West will agree to that. In lieu of that, I don't see any good outcome unless there is an Ides of March or a Caesar moment for President Putin. I don't see psychologically what he believes in is Masonic complex. The fact that some people say he may be a little paranoid and a little megalomaniac, that he will give in and back off. And all that can lead to further escalation. So I see two solutions. The West gives him something to save face because he cannot stand not to be defeated this way, or there is a Julius Caesar moment, an Ides of March moment, and he's disposed as president.
so Winston,
Two things. Mr. Dostoevsky said that the West must concede some to some of Mr. Putin's demands. I say no. That was the same mistake that Mr. Chamberlain made in Munich in '38, making that little concession to Hitler to attain the Sudetenland, and right
absolutely.
after that, he acquired the remainder of the Czechoslovakian nation.
And there are those that say for sure he should have been stopped there.
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I received word about some highly placed German officers. They were totally disgusted with Hitler, and they told us this, urged us to stand fast against Hitler's demands for the Sudetenland, and if we did, the German military would move against Hitler and overthrow him, maybe kill him. Maybe
And
something
it would
like
have
that
been
will
an
happen
Ides
to
of
Putin.
March moment. It would have been an Ides of March moment.
Or maybe a moment more like, hopefully more successfully, to July 20th in 1944, when a number of highly placed officers attempted to assassinate Hitler. It unfortunately didn't work, but I hope if there are any persons out to assassinate Mr. Putin, I hope they are far more successful.
But the point is that when Mr. Dostoevsky uses the term a messianic personality, I
Such
mean,
as Mr. Hitler had.
precisely, precisely. And so when someone thinks that they're doing something because God speaks to them and tells them to do it, and they have people that will follow them, that's a very, very dangerous combination.
Rather like a religious cult in your country.
But that's the thing. So if the world, and we're not talking about a total capitulation on the part of the West, but they have to give Valley something to say that he wasn't humiliated, or he's going to keep fighting and it's going to escalate. Now, maybe internally, someone, like you said, will take him down. The assassination of Hitler, and they had top generals, as you say, Sir Winston, failed. And they were all hung up by a piano wire. And the war lasted another year. So I mean, in terms of civilization, we don't want that. So there has to be a way to calm President Putin down, and I don't really see that unless he gets something.
No way.
But what if as news reporters have, and I understand why they can't because of the Goldwater rule, But the news reporters have been hinting at the fact that Putin seems to be operating in at less than his traditional mental status. I'm trying to be as I mean there's something wrong.
He's becoming, a little crazy, and I'll say it. And as Henry Kissinger said, as you introduced in the original episode of Conversations, he would be a character in one of my novels, and he is a little mentally deranged, just like some of my characters are. But when you become that focused on your own religion and your own morality, and you believe you're right, you're willing to do anything, and the consequences really don't matter. It's the belief in what you believe in.
Yes, and I remember there were reports that after when I was meeting with Harry Truman and Stalin at Potsdam, there were reports that Stalin had a series of small strokes and small heart attacks. Could they have affected some of his judgment?
For sure. Possibly. I thought he had syphilis, but I don't know.
I wouldn't put anything past him.
But no, that's the problem facing the West right now, is the mental state of Valley. And people in that mental state with those firm beliefs are dangerous people. So I only see two solutions: give him something to save face,
no,
or hopefully he's removed internally. Otherwise, I see the war escalating.
But I think one of the things that Winston has just said, that is, or alluded to, and that is, you cannot appease. I mean, the prime minister before that preceded Sir Winston was Neville Chamberlain, and Neville Chamberlain thought that he could reason with Hitler and that there could be peace because he was superior to Hitler, and he could make a deal and negotiate a good deal that didn't involve any warfare. In Munich, 1938. Let us appease this man. Now, I'm simply saying, given that history, you can understand why Sir Winston is as adamant as he is that nothing can be conceded to Putin.
But people with messianic complexes, like Hitler and like President Putin, don't weigh the consequences. So Hitler had a deep hatred for my countrymen and for Slavic people in general. So he was willing to risk, and he did lose the war because of it, attacking my country, my motherland, and establishing a second front. That's not a rational decision. That's an irrational decision based on his mental state, not on any military or any type of strategic combination. And that's what I'm afraid of with Putin. He make decisions based on his beliefs and his hatred and his fears rather than on a rationale and even the same way to make the decision.
I want to just say that we cannot overlook that this has happened historically before, when an invading force came into Russia, and Napoleon certainly had no idea of the consequences of invading Russia.
Well, then why would Hitler do it except for his Masonic complex and his hatred of Slavic people? Because it's not a rational decision, and therefore what worries me is that Valley will make irrational decisions the same way based on his psychological state, not on any type of strategic or sensible motive.
Which means he cares nothing. He cares nothing for his people.
You can't reason with somebody like that.
So what's
You
the
can't
alternative,
reason with
Sir
Hitler.
Winston?
Excuse me?
What's the alternative?
March 15th.
Well, appeasement is not an alternative. You have to be firm with him.
So are you willing at this point, would you be willing to risk World War III?
Maybe it won't come to that. Maybe some elements of the Russian military will move against him.
Well, I said that. I said you need a Caesar moment, but in lieu of that, what's the alternative?
What appeasement is not an alternative.
No, we agree with you. I think we are at the point where we all agree, and that's probably a very fitting conclusion to this series, where we all agree that the only solution, when you examine it from a historical point of view and a psychological point of view, according to Mr. Dostoevsky, who would certainly be in a position to know more the way Putin thinks than we do, and it's been alluded to, it's been stated by Henry Kissinger, no less, that's how you understand Putin, is to understand that he's like a character from a Dostoevsky novel. And so the solution that we all came to is that there has to be within the Russian elite some grand clandestine scheme to rid the world of Vladimir Putin. It has to come from it. It has to be an internal operation. It cannot be external. You can't appease him, and you can't trust him if you make any sort of agreement with him. And it's not likely that we're going to have a military operation against Russia to get rid of him. I think that there has to be this solution, and I think the three of us have agreed upon this, which is very interesting, that the way to end this situation is there must be a Julius Caesar moment. And with that, I thank you so much. This has been wonderful, gentlemen. One of our better conversations across time. Thank you very much, and good night to our audience. Thank you.
Conversation across the town. Conversation across town. Conversation across town. Conversation across town. Conversation across